This sugar cube dissolving in your coffee once helped ignite a slave revolt, bankrupt an emperor, and ultimately reshape the map of North America. You were taught clever American diplomats negotiated the Louisiana Purchase, doubling the United States without firing a single shot in 1803. That familiar story leaves out a hidden chapter, buried beneath the blood-soaked soil of a Caribbean island most history books barely mention. Why would Napoleon Bonaparte, Europe's greatest military commander, suddenly sell half of North America for just pennies an acre? The answer wasn't waiting in Paris or Washington, but inside a boiling world of sweetness Europe had become hopelessly addicted to. Sugar wasn't an ordinary grocery item. It was white gold, among the most profitable commodities traded anywhere in the world. By the 1780s, one Caribbean island produced nearly half the world's sugar, while hundreds of thousands of enslaved people worked themselves to death. France built immense imperial wealth on sugar, using Caribbean fortunes to finance armies, wage wars, and fuel Napoleon's remarkable rise to power. Young artillery officer Napoleon Bonaparte watched that island closely, convinced its sugar wealth could finance his dream of a vast American empire. That dream would soon collide with an impossible rebellion, transforming an everyday luxury into one of history's most unexpected weapons. To understand why an emperor risked everything for sugar, picture London and Paris becoming obsessed with tea, coffee, and chocolate. Sugar transformed bitter drinks into irresistible rituals, turning an aristocratic luxury into an everyday necessity across Europe within just a few decades. By the late 1700s, Europeans consumed far more sugar than previous generations, and demand continued rising every single year. That endless demand transformed Caribbean islands into giant profit machines, powered almost entirely by relentless enslaved labor. Behind every sweetened cup served in Paris stood a hidden machine of suffering that most European customers never witnessed. Welcome to Saint-Domingue in 1789, widely regarded as one of history's richest colonies and the center of global sugar production. France's richest colony generated an enormous share of the nation's overseas trade, making this single island central to its imperial economy. Sugar-laden ships crossed the Atlantic each year, sweetening Europe while pouring extraordinary wealth into France's treasury and expanding its empire. Inside scorching, boiling houses, plantation owners worked enslaved Africans relentlessly, believing replacing exhausted workers cost less than keeping them alive. Every sparkling sugar crystal served at Versailles carried the hidden cost of scarred hands, sleepless nights, and lives consumed for profit. 500,000 enslaved people labored beneath the whip, while secret drums echoed through the mountains, announcing a storm no empire expected. In August 1791, Saint-Domingue's midnight sky glowed with flames as thousands of sugar plantations erupted in a single night. Enslaved workers destroyed mills, smashed boiling houses, and turned their cane knives against the masters who had enslaved them. Europe's sweetest luxury vanished almost overnight, sending markets into panic and shaking every empire built upon slave-grown sugar. From the smoke emerged Toussaint Louverture, a former enslaved coachman who forged a disciplined liberation army from desperate plantation workers. Louverture outmaneuvered royalist generals, building a revolutionary state that proved enslaved people could defeat Europe's strongest armies. Yet the sugar fields were only the beginning. The conflict was about to become a struggle between competing empires. France's monarchy collapsed, leaving its richest colony exposed as rival European empires circled, eager to seize its sugar wealth. British Prime Minister William Pitt invaded Saint-Domingue, determined to capture the world's richest sugar colony for the British Empire. Britain landed more than 20,000 soldiers, expecting an easy victory over fighters who had once been enslaved laborers. Instead, British troops entered a deadly battlefield of ambushes, disease, and relentless guerrilla attacks across scorched sugar plantations. Over 5 brutal years, tropical disease killed tens of thousands of British soldiers, draining Britain's treasury and crushing its Caribbean ambitions. British officers wrote home that they weren't fighting ordinary soldiers, but ghosts who struck from the jungle before disappearing without a trace. Toussaint Louverture steadily wore down the British invasion, forcing the world's strongest empire into a humiliating withdrawal from Saint-Domingue. By 1800, Louverture ruled Saint-Domingue and introduced a constitution permanently abolishing slavery throughout the former French sugar colony. He reopened plantations with paid labor, hoping restored sugar exports might discourage France from launching another devastating invasion. Britain and Spain had both failed to seize the sugar colony. Toussaint prevailed, but Napoleon had been watching every step. Across the Atlantic, Napoleon Bonaparte, now First Consul of France, turned his attention westward with ambitions far beyond Europe. Napoleon quietly reclaimed Louisiana from Spain, imagining a vast agricultural colony supplying food to his profitable Caribbean sugar empire. Studying maps late into the night, Napoleon envisioned a new French empire stretching from the Caribbean deep into North America. Without Saint-Domingue, Louisiana meant little. Napoleon's entire American strategy depended upon that island's sugar wealth. Napoleon rejected the existence of an independent Black Republic, secretly ordering slavery restored and the plantations reclaimed by force. In late 1801, Napoleon assembled France's largest overseas executives, placing his brother-in-law, General Leclerc, in command. 30,000 experienced veterans crossed the Atlantic, carrying secret orders to crush Louverture's revolution and restore French control. Hidden below deck, Leclerc's fleet carried chains and shackles, prepared to restore slavery as soon as the island was conquered. When the French fleet appeared offshore, Black commanders burned coastal cities rather than surrender them to invading forces. General Henri Christophe set the wealthy port of Le Cap ablaze, even burning his own mansion before retreating into the mountains. Napoleon's veterans landed among smoking ruins, realizing the struggle for sugar had become a brutal war for survival. Meanwhile, sugar cubes dissolved into elegant Paris teacups as their owners remained unaware that entire cities were burning to preserve that sweetness. French legions marched inland, relying on rigid European tactics against experienced Haitian fighters who controlled every mountain pass and jungle trail. Napoleon's veterans captured positions at Crête-à-Pierrot, but shrinking supplies and relentless attacks steadily weakened their advantage. General Leclerc admitted his exhausted army was starving, sending desperate letters to Napoleon requesting reinforcements, supplies, and money. Promising peace and reconciliation, Leclerc lured Toussaint Louverture into negotiations before betraying and arresting him. Toussaint was chained inside a freezing French fortress, but his capture unleashed an even fiercer stage of the revolution. After Louverture's capture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines assumed command, ordering uncompromising resistance against every French advance. Dessalines exposed France's plan to restore slavery, warning that defeat meant chains, whips, and bondage would return immediately. French commanders escalated the conflict with brutal tactics, including attack dogs and campaigns of terror against suspected rebels. Yet every act of brutality strengthened resistance, turning burned sugar plantations into deadly traps for French soldiers. France still held ruined port cities, but the mountains belonged entirely to revolutionaries fighting for freedom and survival. Napoleon remained convinced that one final offensive would recover the sugar wealth, supporting his entire imperial vision. Then, an invisible enemy appeared, one Napoleon's planners had completely overlooked: tropical yellow fever. Mosquitoes spread yellow fever through French camps, devastating European soldiers who possessed little natural immunity against the deadly virus. Thousands of French soldiers collapsed with fever as disease quietly destroyed Napoleon's finest expeditionary force. General Leclerc watched his once powerful army disappear, reporting to Napoleon that barely 4,000 soldiers remained fit for battle. Yellow fever soon claimed Leclerc himself, leaving the shattered expedition under the ruthless command of General Rochambeau. Rochambeau answered resistance with terror, yet Dessalines steadily surrounded and destroyed his exhausted forces. At the Battle of Vertières in November 1803, Haitian forces stormed the last French defenses through relentless artillery fire, sealing the fate of Napoleon's expedition. France's remaining commanders surrendered and fled the island, leaving tens of thousands of soldiers buried beneath Caribbean soil. On January 1, 1804, Dessalines proclaimed Haiti the world's first independent black republic founded by formerly enslaved people. The loss of Saint-Domingue shattered Napoleon's Western strategy, stripping away the Caribbean wealth needed to sustain an American empire. Without Saint-Domingue's immense sugar revenues, France's finances weakened as another war with Britain made Napoleon's American ambitions increasingly impossible to sustain. Standing alone at Saint-Cloud, Napoleon stared across his maps, watching the American empire he imagined quietly slip beyond his reach. Napoleon admitted that without Saint-Domingue, Louisiana had become a burden France could neither defend nor afford to keep. American envoys arrived hoping to buy only New Orleans, unaware Napoleon had already abandoned his collapsing American dream. Instead, Napoleon astonished the diplomats by offering the entire Louisiana territory, larger than Western Europe, at an extraordinary bargain. He needed immediate funds for another European war and feared Britain would seize Louisiana once hostilities resumed. With one signature, Napoleon transferred more than 800,000 square miles, forever reshaping the future of the United States. For $15 million, roughly 3 cents an acre, the United States acquired territory made available by Haiti's revolution. The real story isn't that sugar doubled America, but that a slave revolution created the conditions making the Louisiana Purchase possible. Thomas Jefferson celebrated America's greatest land purchase while saying remarkably little about the revolution that made it possible. As a slaveholder, Jefferson feared Haiti's victory might inspire similar uprisings throughout the American South. That fear helped shape American policy, leaving Haiti isolated and unrecognized for decades after winning its independence. While settlers expanded across newly acquired lands, Haiti faced diplomatic isolation, economic punishment, and powerful international blockades. In 1825, French warships forced Haiti to accept an enormous payment in exchange for recognizing its independence. France demanded 150 million gold francs, compensating former plantation owners for both lost land and formerly enslaved people. That crushing debt burden trapped Haiti in poverty for generations. While the United States continued expanding westward, the same sugar that enriched empires left the people who harvested it paying the highest price long after freedom was won. It's tempting to end here, but another truth remains. Yellow fever, alongside revolution, helped determine Napoleon's defeat. Historians continue debating how differently history might have unfolded had disease not devastated the French expedition. Beneath everything stood Europe's relentless hunger for sugar, making Saint-Domingue one of the world's most valuable colonies. Napoleon never revived his American ambitions, turning instead toward European battlefields until his final defeat at Waterloo. Many historians consider the Saint-Domingue expedition among Napoleon's greatest strategic mistakes and one of his costliest wars. North America's map was shaped not only by treaties, but also by enslaved people who refused to keep harvesting sugar. Behind America's westward expansion stands the forgotten story of revolutionaries whose fight changed the continent's future. Without Saint-Domingue's collapse, the United States would likely have developed with a dramatically different map. Today, few Americans realize their nation's map was partly shaped by burning cane fields thousands of miles away. Haiti won its freedom, yet generations spent more than a century repaying an unjust debt for ending slavery. Every state carved from the Louisiana Purchase carries part of a story written by enslaved rebels who defied an empire. Tomorrow morning, when a sugar cube disappears into your coffee, remember that an empire's greatest ambition vanished with it. History's greatest conquests weren't always won by armies. Sometimes they were hidden inside the ordinary things we barely notice every day.